Hey everybody, it's Nick here again from the Greyscalegorilla.com podcast. And in today's episode, Chris and Chad and I talk about the importance of learning how to use nodes, whether it's in Espresso or in your compositing tool. We also go over the history of HDRI Link and why it took us over a year to get this plugin out to you guys to start using. We also talk about the importance of compositing and why you should never let your render be naked coming out of Cinema 4D. All right, before we get into today's episode, I wanted to invite you guys, those of you who use Arnold or Octane and also use HDRIs, to a very special workshop that we're having January 12th, and that's noon Central Time. And this workshop is all to celebrate the launch of HDRI Link, which comes out this week. Really excited. And if you guys use Arnold and Octane, you don't want to miss this workshop where Chad Ashley is going to show you not only how to use HDRI Link to speed up your workflow, but he's also going to give you some tips and tricks to speed up your rendering process, even if you don't end up getting HDRI Link. But if you'd like to learn a little bit more about this and sign up for this live workshop, you can go to grayscalegorilla.com/HDRI Link. And that's grayscalegorilla.com/HDRI Link. And to make it even easier, we're going to link it up here on YouTube and on iTunes as well. No matter where you're listening, you can go see our show notes. You can just click through and register, but be sure to register. It's a limited amount of people that could show up this Thursday at 12 noon. We hope to see you there live for an HDRI workshop. All right, with that, let's head on into today's podcast where you'll join Chris Schmidt, Chad Ashley, and me, Nick Campbell, a little bit tired this morning. I'm not quite sure why we were so tired, but we pick up our energy as the episode goes, I promise. So let's head on in and join today's podcast. Well, hi, guys. I think we're all kind of low energy today. Is that right?
I think so.
I think Chad's got his hoodie up.
Yeah, it's like the dog days of winter are upon us.
I'm usually real pumped on Mondays. I'm up and at 'em, yelling at the internet about Happy Monday, but I don't know. Something happened today. I think you guys might be with me.
What happened? Yeah, what happened to everybody to make it so terrible?
I don't know. Like, I feel like February. Well, I don't know. After the holidays, it's like, okay, I'm ready for winter to be done. And like, there's no reason for it to be cold anymore. Holidays are all done. Like, can we go back to like going outside and being 60 something outside?
Yeah, there's no uplifting holiday music to get you through it.
Then, I'm so like, I'm not a big sports guy, but I'm a Bears fan, and the Bears suck so bad, and like they're not even. It's just, and I hate the Packers so much, and they've been winning. So there's that on top of Princess Leia and like all this stuff just piling on me.
Sometimes it's a bad day. When you guys have a bunch to do, like this is a big week, right? We got HDRI Link launching tomorrow. We've been working over a year on this thing. Yet here we are, all exhausted for whatever reason. Who knows? Can't drink enough coffee today. What do you do when you're like this? Because I don't know if I have a secret formula, or like, other than drink a ton of coffee. Do you guys have any cures for this?
Cures? I'm not sure. I mean, I just need a nap. See, I'm not depressed.
Right here. Yeah, it's the nap, dude.
Like, I just didn't. I stayed up late every night this weekend, like super late, because I was in the building some Lego stuff. So I was just like doing Lego stuff all weekend, and I was like staying up until like 4 a.m. So then last night I was trying to get to bed at my normal time, and I still didn't get to bed until like 3:30.
Even just from habits of going to bed late.
From having gone to bed late and then waking up late. So I screwed myself over.
That's so late. I am not a night person at all, and if I stay up. If you have me up to like midnight, I'm gonna be the biggest jerk. Like
midnight? Really?
Yeah, dude. I'm like, I hate staying up late. Like when I was in a band and we'd play these like 10 o'clock shows, it was the worst. I was like just sitting there like wanting to die by the end of it. Like
my band, we played a later show, but we were really excited because we could just grab all our stuff and head home. And we accidentally left some stuff up on the stage, and as the second band started playing, and we realized we have to watch their whole set, and they were the worst. They were the worst.
Dude, that's the story of my entire musical.
Yeah, it's basically every show, and but they were like what did we call them? They're that band that had everything new. Like they went to Guitar Center and decided to start a band that day and just bought it all fresh from the store.
Yeah,
It was like all still had the stickers on it, and we're like, oh man, what a band! And we're just like waiting and waiting, and all their friends were there, like encouraging them to keep playing. And we're just like. 1:00. 1:00 came and we're like, oh god.
We were notorious for a few members of my band were notorious for just kind of not being so polite. Like if we headlined a show and the opening band went long, my guitarist would literally stand in front of them in the front of the crowd and be like, wrap it up, like
like facing the band.
But yeah, he would be so mad. I remember one time he almost unplugged he may have unplugged somebody's amp or something. Like,
you guys are punk rock. I like this.
I mean, we didn't mess around. We didn't mess around back in the day, man. Like that was nobody. You just didn't do that. You didn't play 45 minutes as an opening band. Like that's just rude.
Yeah, we've been there. Okay, so sleep. That's obvious. That's an obvious one. Coffee. So far, very not. Here's a question. What do you guys usually do in the morning? Let's start there, and then we'll get into something a little bit more, 3D related here in a minute. Do you guys have a regular schedule?
Mm-hmm. I do, but it's going to be like the opposite of you guys, I bet. So I want to hear one of you first.
Chad, you seem like the most structured. You got the family and everything. I don't know.
My wife, she's a saint, and like she kind of got used to getting the kids together back when I didn't work at home. So like she kind of still does that. So I roll out of bed probably around 7:45, 8:00. Come down, have a coffee. Kids are finishing up, getting ready to go. They take off. I usually try to do something physical, which these days is not happening. Usually I would ride my bike or work out or whatever, and then take a shower, come up to work. That's pretty much it.
That's good.
Exciting.
I wake up anywhere. It stretches, man. Anytime between 8 and 10. I'm not a good morning person. If I have something scheduled, I pop right out of bed if there's like a flight or something. But usually it's 8 to 10ish, I'd say. Maybe a little later around the holidays when it's so dark out. But and then I usually get my wife makes Post-it notes every morning and puts them on the mirror. So I get a fresh Post-it note that says Happy Tuesday. In this case, Happy Monday. Read that, and let's see.
I've always wondered about these Post-it notes because I follow them. Does she trace them, or how is she doing these?
So
some of them are pretty damn good.
You follow them?
Yeah,
she posts them on Instagram and Snapchat.
Oh.
Here, I've questioned the same thing, and I've continuously told her that she's actually a more natural artist and a better designer than I am. Like I have to fight to figure out how in the heck, to not use 100 fonts, She has this ability to even with layout and stuff to go oh, that's just in the way, move this over here. So she draws these things from visual. She'll look at it, but then she'll draw it. And they do, a lot of them are perfect. Like a perfect Fred Flintstone will just pop up on one of these Post-it notes. I don't know how she does it. So
she must if she's like me, she finds a picture of them on the phone and then just does it that way. Yeah.
I mean, this is all in the mysterious hours of 6 o'clock when she actually wakes up.
I'm like, she wakes up that early? Holy cow.
Yeah. She's built of energy. I don't know how she does it. Cause she goes to bed after I do too. Something's up.
Dude.
She's got some of that magic power stuff. I don't know what it is. But anyway, there's that. Look at my Post-it note. I smile, makes me happy. And then I usually do push-ups. I've been trying to get to 100 push-ups for years now, and I feel like if I pushed myself a little more, I'd be there. But I'm at 80 right now, so I do 80 push-ups.
Oh my gosh! I'm lucky if I could do 3.
And then, hey, 3 will get you 4. 4 will get you 8. Just keep it up, man. When I started, I was at I think 15. So that was a couple years ago. Anyway, so there's that. then do some stretching. I have some lower back issues. Do some stretching, a little yoga sometimes. Then I hop in the shower, and then here's the real secret. And I did this today. I don't know why it didn't work. You could do a hot shower. I figured it out. But at the end of your hot shower, you got to go all the way cold. Just take it all the way cold, and then stand there for at least a minute.
Never.
And you can make as much noise as you want, which I really do. Sometimes I'll sing like a song I know really loud, just to like, you're trying to almost get out of your head. Sometimes I'll do like a little exercise in the shower, just like leg lifts or something, just to keep my mind off the cold. But that 1 minute of cold does so much to wake me up. It is like, I can't go a day without it now. Like, even if I'm in a hurry and I need to run out the door, I'll still like go just to get the cold to like wake me up. It's like part of my day right now. Wow. But then that's it. Then I get sometimes a to-go breakfast sandwich from Marie. Also, she's up making breakfast sandwiches. I don't know how she does it.
Hungry.
And then that's usually my routine. Chris.
Yeah, so you guys put effort into your mornings. I wake up at I usually shower the night before. I wake up at like 9:40 every day. I get ready in 10 minutes, and then Johnny gets here, and then we all go for a 10-minute walk, and then we go to work. I don't eat breakfast. I don't work out. I did the shower the night before. Like, it's 20 minutes from bed to work.
Yeah, I guess we should all say that Chad works from home, Chris works from home, and I'm in an office that's only about a mile. So I bike to work, but that's only a 5-minute bike. So yeah, we're all within a few minutes from our computer, which is cool.
Yeah, it didn't used to be that way. I probably had a much more interesting answer to that question when I was commuting. It was driving for an hour and a half every day.
Can you believe that? You have like 3 extra hours in your day that you're not in a car now.
I know.
It's the future. It's the future of working.
I do miss I used to drive an hour each way for 5 years, and I do miss the audiobooks. But because it's like we were talking about a couple weeks ago, where like the drive would just disappear. And then, and then even on the way home, you get home and you're there and you're sitting in the driveway, like, wait, I want to finish this chapter. So it takes the worst part of your day and like makes it into one of the best. Audiobooks are amazing.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chad.
I was just going to say, I used to call people, like, because I used to do audiobooks too, but then I just got into this habit of like, there's like 3 or 4 people that I would just call every day, and we would just like shoot the shit and end up, talking my whole ride. And
I remember that, Chad. We'd actually schedule a few of those when we were talking about hiring you and getting that kind of like talking, going. There was a lot of those from the car. That's actually a good place to do it. See, I also, like, I'm obsessed with audiobooks, podcasts. Like, I just took a photo of my little earbuds yesterday on Instagram and said, thank you for all of your duty, all of your service. These poor little earpods are in my pocket all day long because any extra 5 minutes I have, they're in my dang ears. I'm catching up with podcasts, audiobooks. And I guess I don't miss the commute because it's been a long time since I had a long commute in a car. Almost maybe never. Wow. I've been in Chicago for so long. That's a different story. Anyway, what I do is I do a road trip every year, and it's actually coming up for me. So I've been planning that a little bit. I do a big road trip in February, and I go out and I see a lot of friends that moved out west. A lot of my friends moved to Denver. Actually meeting up with EJ. He's out in Denver now. And then I go see some friends in Salt Lake City as well. And this year we're going to California. That trip alone is usually about 80 hours in a car to go all the way across and back. We kind of go the slow route back. My wife flies out, meets me, we go back. By the end of it, we can listen to like 3 huge audiobooks or, not maybe hundreds of podcasts, but, dozens of different podcast episodes. We kind of like batch it all together because I love that part so much. I love that sitting in a car and like learning. Mobile classroom, folks. It's a mobile classroom, I'll tell you. Well, there you go. I do still feel tired today. What can we do right now? Can we do calisthenics maybe? Stretching? Let's try this.
Let's try.
This is really entertaining, I'm sure, for
all grunting sounds that we're making for all those people at home.
This is good, actually. Well, yeah. I mean, when I'm feeling this way, there's something. To me, it was best described on this website. I'll link it up to everybody. Let me see if I could get the link right. It's called Wait But Why. So I discovered this website at the end of last year. It's a lot of really smart thinking about procrastination and how people get work done, and it's just really kind of, like he hand draws all these little crappy cartoons, and it's just really well done. But one of the things that he describes is procrastination, and he describes it in a way that procrastination is this little like energetic monkey that follows you around and is like, no, don't do that important thing. Come play with this fun stuff, or go watch a YouTube video, or like, let's, do something short-term fun, right? And then that little monkey kind of takes over your brain for a long time until something really important happens or a deadline is coming up, which in case, so he describes the monkey as not really scared of anything until the oh crap, I need to get this done tomorrow monster comes out. I forget what he calls this monster. But basically that monster takes over your brain at this point is the only thing that could push the like procrastination monkey away. I'm doing a really poor job on doing this. We're going to link this up.
I'm monsters. What?
Yeah, we're getting really, he, like I said, he draws these cute little little drawings that goes with this, but I'm feeling that right now. I feel like the only thing that is like pushing my brain is all the stuff that we have to do. And if not, I'd be taking a nap as well.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, man. Like I'm right now, like so consumed with HDRI Link, and like getting that out, and it's kind of like it's really been the focus for the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Well, more than that. I mean, we've been working on it for a long time.
Yeah. Well,
let's talk about that. Let's talk about why it took so long and the history.
The history of HDRI Link.
Of the program the plugin that's not even out yet.
I can start that one because it's when you were starting to be away for long periods of time, Nick. So you might be gone for months at a time, and you and I were on a long phone call about all this stuff. And we're in the middle of several plugins already, and you're like, "Hey, I've got this idea for a plugin." I was like, "Okay, what is it?" Because I'm used to those calls.
That sounds like me.
And then you start describing the basics of what would become HDRI Link. And at the time, oh man, this makes me sad now. But at the time, the way you were describing it, I was like, that sounds like the kind of thing we could make in like 2 days. Like it was just like the basics of like, oh, we're just going to drag in this parameter and that's going to work. And then we started actually pursuing it, and it was awful. But yeah, do you have some stuff to interject there, Nick, before I talk about
I'll just set up. I think you're doing a great job. I'll just set up the whole idea, which is, HDRI Studio Rig, or HDRI Studio Pack, as it used to be called, was built out of the idea that, HDRIs was basically the idea that I discovered HDRIs, and I'm like, this is amazing. This whole process that you could just light with existing HDRIs or with studios and all this stuff got my brain thinking in such a different way when it came to lighting my scenes. But I hated the whole HDRI process of like going and finding them on your hard drive, and you'd get them from different places on the internet. They'd all be in different folders. You could
it's even worse for me. Whenever I was using an HDRI image, right, that's redundant. Actually, in case people might not know, like HDRI stands for High Dynamic Range Image. So don't say image after the I.
I do it
like
all the time.
A pin number. So you don't want to do that. But for me, like 4 years since they existed until I started using HDRI Studio Rig, I would just go into my computer's search bar, search for .hdr, whatever popped up, I would click on that, and that was my lighting.
Yeah,
you put a lot of thought into it. That's good.
There might be a couple.
Sometimes I find the other one. I had like kitchen.hdr, and it was like, that's it. That's what I'm using forever. That's my lighting.
Probe.
And I throw it maybe in a hue shift and just shift it to green or yellow.
Yeah, I mean, so that process that you're describing was, I think, something a lot of us did, which was use the same one over and over again. And if we needed to alter it, we had to go in and alter it like somewhere else. So for me, building HDRI Studio Pack and HDRI Studio Rig was the ability to like make it really simple, drag and drop, click it, like be able to see your thumbnails, all that stuff. And so, and that was perfect. Life was great. Like it's one of our biggest sellers. I use it in almost every render I do.
Even
physical.
I use it.
Even Chris uses it. So like big stuff, right? And then Octane and Arnold and third-party rendering started happening maybe 2 years ago. And, I'll describe this as an artist, but I'll also describe it as, somebody that like builds plugins for a living, like we all do, like we're all a part of. I looked at it and I'm like, how do we decide at the beginning of this big third-party render movement, which horse to back, And this was my thinking process a couple years ago as people started asking us at the time a lot of Octane questions. Octane really started taking off, especially in the daily render space, which we've always been, a big part of, and pushing people to all these daily renders. And frankly, we just didn't have the answers. So for a long time, we kind of decided, well, we're gonna serve this physical and standard market. This Octane thing, I don't know if it's going to take off.
Yeah, maybe these third-party renders will go away. That's what I was crossing my fingers for. Like, no, just go away.
No.
Yeah,
Nope.
I mean, I'll say this.
Nope.
As an artist, I got excited about the capabilities and the things that you could do, especially when I played with it and saw the speed. As a business owner, frankly, like as somebody that is building software and running a team, I'm like, oh, here's another like splintering of our market, right? We're already like not all 3D. We don't serve all 3D software applications. We only serve Cinema 4D. And now we don't serve all Cinema 4D. We're actually only the people that jump into Arnold or Octane or whatever we choose, right?
So doubly the problem, because most of our tools that we make are lighting and texturing tools. And what are the two things that change in every renderer? Lighting. And texturing. So that brings us to what Chris was mentioning, which was I was brainstorming. I was like literally like they tell me to do in books, like pull out a piece of paper and just start brainstorming your way through this process of like, how do you solve this problem? A lot of our customers are moving to these third-party renders. I want to start playing with these third-party renders, but I'm almost like pushing myself away from it because I don't know how to solve this problem and actually make plugins that will serve this customer base, right? And that's when the idea of HDRI Link came to me, was a little bit of thinking of it from the way that we do Signal. So if you've used Signal in the past, you know that you can actually drag any parameter into Signal and it automatically will animate. I was thinking, am I missing a step, Chris? Well, sort of. You're skipping a whole 6 months of development.
Oh,
which was when it was just a smart tag.
That's what it was. The original one was actually building it directly into the renderer.
The original one, I think the original one was a tag, but it automatically knew where to feed it. So we were behind the scenes. We were attempting for 6 months. We were trying to hard code how it should be placed. Mm-hmm. So it was like, it should, like if you put it on an Octane light, I don't even know that, like a Arnold dome light, it's automatically going to find the proper parameter and then automatically input the thing. And then we talked to Chad, and Chad's like, oh, no, you're supposed to insert a shader first, and then you feed that into the shader. And I was like, okay, now we're starting that whole process again from scratch. And then we're trying to do it with Octane, and then new renderers. This year, a new renderer comes out like every 2 weeks.
Yeah, so I think what you're describing, Chris, is something we butt into all the time with building software, which is at what point do we make a decision for our customer to make their life easier? But if you make too many decisions for a customer or for a user of a plugin, then it actually limits the ability for them to use it the way that they want to use it. Does that make sense? Like we come up against that with a lot of our plugins, and it's really, what Cinema 4D does well in the first place, which is it's very flexible, it's a very open platform, but they hide some of the complexity from you up front so that to give you good options to start with. And then if you want to get under the hood, you could go change that. So with HDRI Link, we were trying to make it drag and drop on any renderer and it'll automatically just work. And what we realized was not only is that too complex to figure out, but all the standards are changing with every render. Every new version of a render, they would change that process, which means we would have to recode it, figure it out, it would break. And what we decided was to leave one part of the process up to the user, and that is you decide where you want your HDRIs to go, and we'll do the rest. And we're not going to make that decision for you. So once we figured out that part of the mental process of like, what's the customer, like what's the workflow now for our users? The workflow now is in any renderer you want, you can go to where the HDRIs, you would usually go through that process that Chris is describing of like finding it on your hard drive. And instead of going and finding it on your hard drive, now you just drag that where your HDRI goes onto an HDRI link tag, and now you're good. Now you could literally click and see instant results of each of our HDRIs in your renderer.
Yeah. It went from searching your hard drive to double clicking an icon and having access to potentially hundreds of HDRIs.
Yeah. And now with the new rendering, like now with Octane and Arnold doing the real-time rendering, if you're on preview mode, and I don't know if we're getting too behind the scenes here, the thing's not even out yet, but I think we're just excited for this plugin that we've been working on for over a year to finally be out, which is tomorrow, by the way. We didn't really talk about that, but
right. Well,
I'll
I think
give you,
too,
I'll give you the little
before you
teaser.
talk about the launch though, dude, like you got to mention the fact that like we had it ready to go several times, and then a couple things would happen where you'd be like, oh, I think we could probably do this better or that better.
There's little tweaks. And let me just throw out there, when we made that transition to dragging the parameter, we threw away like 6 months of development time. Yeah. We had a effect, like not quite finished, but we demoed it. We demoed the old version of this like at NAB. And then it was like, this is just not working. We're at NAB and there's like 3 new renderers at the booth. Like, how do we deal with this? Like, we cannot keep up with it. We'll be spending all of our time keeping up with all the different renderers and keeping this plugin smart, by trying to outsmart everybody else's renderer.
Right.
So we threw away 6 months of development and started again from scratch. And that's why it's taken so dang long for this plugin to come out.
Well, not only that, but you're forgetting we had it ready to go. And then like the timing of it was like interfering with, like, it would get in the way of our annual sale and other things that we were doing. So we ended up saying, okay, well, let's just shoot for January. And so really, I've been using it on everything for over a year now, I think, or whenever that version.
Yeah, and David.
Yeah.
And
like,
daily renders,
it's funny, like to me, like it's just become second nature to use it. And like, if I watch somebody online or whatever doing lighting, using image-based lighting, either in Octane, Arnold, whatever, I'm always like, what are they doing? Why are they doing like what's happening? And I just remember like, oh yeah, they don't have HDRI Link.
Yeah, it's one of those simple yet powerful plugins. I am really excited to get it out. I'm the same way. I've been learning Arnold through Chad for the last few months, and yeah, without that, I mean, I don't know what I would be doing. I'd probably be doing the same thing, which is like using the same HDR all over, or in like every render.
Yeah, what was that kitchen probe? Is that the one you mentioned? I think that was the same one. I think we all had that because that came free with Cinema.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that sounds real
that was my
familiar.
HDR. Yeah,
my go-to was the Uffizi probe, shot by legendary HDRI artist. Wow, Paul Debevic. My brain is not moving fast enough today. Paul Debevic is kind of the guy that sort of pioneered HDRI, and he shot one of the most widely used HDRIs ever, which is the Uffizi, I think. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's someplace in Italy, I think. It might be a cathedral or something, but you've seen it. It's like a very long strip of light. It's kind of like, really pretty. I think before there were all these people that were using or shooting HDRIs, that was like an easy one to get and it looked cool. And I must use that like on at least 20 projects.
Yeah, it is nice to have that go-to, but once you have the ability to start clicking around and seeing all the drastically different ones instantly, it's like, I wish I had this all the time.
We keep adding new HDRIs to the collection all the time. So I kind of had my favorites I'd go to, but like, I don't
Gotta
know,
branch out.
like I got a teaser, but we've got the modern industrial coming out, and like I just like the colors of a lot of those. So I'm getting away from a favorite, and I'm just like starting to click around. Like every time, let's try a different one.
So, little can I ask for a feature? Can we do feature requests?
Are we doing feature requests on our
we
own
haven't even
plugin?
launched.
Okay, so what would be awesome is if like if I could like favorite one or something, and then I could like just show favorites.
Oh, I see.
Oh, okay. We are working on the new browser stuff.
This technology.
Sorry, I just delayed us another 10 months.
Yep. Sorry, it's not coming.
Sorry, guys, not out tomorrow.
Sorry. My bad.
I'll tell you though, what Chad did bring was the preview mode, which was a big help, especially with these real-time renderers. The longest process of choosing your HDR for a while was it literally just loading into the program.
Yeah,
and some of these your hard drive spinning up and loading up. And some of these, HDRs are, huge, right? So every time you clicked it, it would have to load in. And so what we built into all of our HDRI packs and with HDRI Link specifically is the preview mode. And when you have preview mode on, it loads in a lower resolution version. It's got the same light data as far as how bright everything is. You get a really good idea of what your scene looks like, but it's much lower resolution, which means if you're in Arnold or Octane, you got your window running, you could just like click, and it changes instantly in the corner. It's such a unique thing coming from my old guy stuff. And Chad, you have this even more back when we just realized how long that even took to render it all within HDR. And now we could just click through this stuff. I guess I'm just getting excited to launch.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
The preview mode is interesting too, because like I find myself, and this will make a lot more sense to all the people that are kind of wondering what the hell we're talking about. It'll make a lot more sense tomorrow or end of the week when you start seeing some of the stuff surface. But the preview mode, it's a smaller version of the original HDR, and for most things that I've done, I've kept it on preview mode. Like I've not. Like the only time that I really need like a super high resolution HDRI is if I'm going to do some macro shot of like a product or something and I'm getting really close to the reflection and I need to see that resolution. Otherwise, I don't really need it that much. I don't really need that much.
Yeah, it's only if you get super duper close or if you're going to be turning on the background so that you can see the background.
And I don't ever recommend to people to do that because it's just that's not what. I mean, yes, you can buy HDRIs that have backgrounds and you could put the camera in the right place and all that. But that's not what we have here. What we have here are based on making cool reflections and cool lighting. Like, your background is up to you. You make your background, use a sweep, make a whole scene, whatever you want to do. They're not really made for backgrounds. And that's something that I don't think any HDRI is ever really good for backgrounds, which is why a lot of them come with background plates where people will shoot an actual like background plate for their HDRI. And those are fine, but like that's not really the appeal to me of HDRI Link. I think is just like, oh, I get to choose. I can go through and test out like 30 or 40 different images to light my scene. And always I'll find something that I didn't either think of or maybe I forgot was even in the library, and I'm always surprised. I'm always like, oh damn, that looks good, and
right.
And then you can just literally like, oh, before you'd be like, well, I'll just use that same one because I liked it in that last thing I did and it worked out pretty well. But now I feel like I'm using more variety of them, maybe even for different shots of something I'm doing or whatnot. And plus, I think once you use it a lot more, you start to understand what we need more of in our library as a whole. Because I've already, that's why we're going to be coming out with more packs that are going to be kind of based on that knowledge of using it for a year and seeing where we're thin. Like maybe we need more of this kind of HDRI and that kind of HDRI.
Yeah.
So we're going to start adding those, which I think is cool because you're not gonna. I don't think we'll ever have like. You'll never satisfy me in terms of like we have everything, so there'll always be something for us to go shoot and add to the tool. So
yeah, it's always going to be something unique. It's like saying we have enough pop songs. Like you got new ones coming out all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't mean to make it a commercial about this thing. I think for us though, it's really excited, a little behind the scenes to get this out finally. We've been using it for a year. A lot of our beta testers have been using it for over a year. Everything on David's locked and loading Instagram, he's basically like, yeah, it's on every render. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get this out. Show show this stuff in person. So yeah, so if you're, I'll just say this last bit. If you're a third-party renderer user in Cinema 4D, check out Link. It launches tomorrow. That's Tuesday, the 10th of January. And also sign up for I'll probably put this at the beginning of the podcast too, but if you're skipping ahead, also sign up for the live workshop that Chad's doing on Thursday, January 12th. And that's going to be all about how to use HDRI Link in Arnold and Octane. And he's also going to show you some tips on how to speed up your rendering in Arnold and Octane, even if you don't end up buying Link. So you could register for that at Greyscalegorilla.com/HDRI Link. And as always, we're going to put all these show notes down here. We got all the notes from earlier in the show already popping up there. You can go find us on iTunes or on the blog as well. I got it. I can't even get excited, man. I am excited, but my voice won't catch up. I got to wake up.
I'm starting to feel pretty good. I'm awake.
You're in? I may have to go like literally make another coffee here. But yeah,
good coffee and maybe a nap.
We got a big day tomorrow. We got this.
We got to rest up.
Yeah, everybody rest up tonight. We got a big day tomorrow.
A whole year's worth of developing this thing. We got to launch it. I'm just glad I'm glad we figured Link out for everybody to use. I didn't want to live and build a world around one renderer because I just don't think that that's the future. I think that's what kept me away from like, oh, let's build Lightkit for Octane, right? What kept me away from all that was I just know that it's going to be more and more and more. If you think it's splintered now, man, just even in the last year, you've seen more of these renders popping up. So in the long term, I think we made the right move by making it, I call it render agnostic. So you bring the render, you bring what you need to the job, and then our tool will hook you up into our HDRIs, no matter where you end up. So yeah, if you're an Arnold or Octane user or any third party works with V-Ray, we've tested it with cycles, all that stuff. But we'll talk more about that tomorrow.
How many are there now? How many third-party renderers are?
I don't know.
If you wanted to buy one,
I consider us in the middle of the render wars. And I'm curious because right now there's all these countries. It's like the start of World War I. Like a couple countries start at it, and the other ones keep jumping in. They're like, "Oh, we're going to jump in." I am really curious, a year or two, or who knows, 5 years from now, where it's going to like flatten out. And is it going to be like waxing and waning kind of thing? Is Arnold and Octane, are they going to be huge for a couple years? And then, hey, look, this other one came along, and that one seems pretty awesome, and that becomes a big one, and the other one fades away. Like, I don't know. But the market can't sustain this many renderers.
No.
There will be a consolidation. I mean, I think it's always hard to predict the future, but I think you're right, Chris. We're in the middle of experimenting.
Yeah, I think everybody's just kind of seeing what the market can support and how many different companies. A lot of these companies, even the ones that you would think are bigger, they're not really that big. I mean, they don't have, I'd imagine, a lot of overhead to maintain the software, but it is a lot to, I mean, it's one thing to make a plugin, but it's a whole other thing to write a renderer. It's a very complex thing to do. And that's why the good ones tend to outshine the maybe not so good ones, because they've put the development time, the energy, the money into the years of figuring out the most efficient way to do the math. And, and I think that a lot of it has to do with, it used to be that if you wrote a path tracer, you would have to have the most expensive machine in the world to run it because and even then it was so dog slow. So I think it's now gotten to a point where the systems are fast enough for people to write kind of sloppy. And I'm not saying that anybody out there has written a slop. Maybe I'm not a code guy, but I imagine that some of the newcomers or even people that have been out there a while, I imagine that their code probably wouldn't run as well on older machines as they do on newer machines. So it's a lot easier, I think, to get that stuff out. I think it's worth mentioning, though. I don't know if you guys heard this, but I think the Oscar SciTech Awards were announced, and Marcos from Solid Angle received a SciTech Oscar, I think, for Arnold. And then I think Vlado from V-Ray was also received one as well, which is really cool because these are guys that have dedicated their lives to making rendering easier and faster and better, and
to those equations behind the scenes that we never got to see.
It's really Marcos is a pretty interesting guy, and you should definitely check him out. He started a long time ago writing a ray tracer and developed Arnold, and it was used in a bunch of feature films. And then I think he eventually worked at Sony, and it became like the renderer. The first movie that they rendered in Arnold was, I think, Monster House. Have you guys ever seen that?
Oh yeah, I saw that in the theater.
Yeah, it's a really interesting look. It's got a really kind of cool look to it. That was like the first path traced movie, I think, which was crazy at that time. Anyway, so yeah, check him out. He's like a math guru and is like dedicated to making the math smarter, faster, better, and he'll talk your ear off about all the stuff that I'm just like right over my head, dude. I'm not a math guy at
Dude, this
all.
stuff is so crazy. Like at Half Res this last year, I always try and do a goofy presentation. And so this time I did a demo in version 6 of Cinema 4D, like version 6 XL. And it was running on the machine I'm doing this on this cast from. And doing even one pass of reflection was so slow. Like so many improvements have been made just to like the algorithms and like all the math behind the scenes is so much better than it used to be. Like I'm sure across the board everywhere, like everybody comes up with new equations and faster processes. And so like even with this hardware, like if I were to run R18 and then hit go on the same scene as R16, it's going to be insanely different. It's crazy.
Yeah, all those white papers that show up that you see parts of the videos or you see it at SIGGRAPH, like all that stuff is watched and then implemented the next year. It's like, they found a faster way to do bounces with less grain and then average it out and do all this. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. We'll take that. We'll put that in. And all of a sudden you get a new version and you're like, wow, this is feeling snappy. I think you're right, man. We're in the render wars. It'd be fun to see how this all figures out. And I think moving forward, I mean, that's kind of, I know our goal is to not necessarily leave anybody in the dust or pick sides or anything in this war. We're staying
staying neutral.
We're staying neutral, I guess.
I don't know. We're not that neutral though. We all kind of have our favorites.
Well, I mean, we're definitely going to have Arnold and Octane tutorials coming out. We're working on some Arnold and Octane training also. I mean, we're definitely moving in that direction. But I think overall, it's nice that we can kind of move with everyone else, and the ability for us to make plugins to help you move to wherever you end up is, I'm just glad we're there. So it's something I was worried about, but now that, you know, if RenderMan comes out and everyone decides, holy crap, this is the best thing in Cinema 4D, we all have to use it. Ideally, you know, HDRI Link just works with it. So that's the future I'd like to move us into, which I'm glad we are. So I know this sounds like more of a behind the scenes patting on the back of everybody, but you guys got to realize we don't work together. We all work together, but we're all in different offices. So the only time we get to celebrate each other's wins is over the podcast usually. Maybe
so
I
you
should.
have to suffer through that.
You guys have to suffer through our behind the scenes rah.
I
Thanks.
will. I do. I do have a topic that just came to my head, and it's kind of it's pertinent to the tutorial that Chris just released, and
Ooh.
it's just about somebody had hit me up on a YouTube comment or something like that, or maybe it was Twitter. I forget which one, but they were like, I was talking about a renderer. It was probably Arnold, knowing me, and they were like, I would get into it, but I'm just so afraid of nodes. And I'm here to say that you do not have to be afraid of nodes, because nodes are probably the best thing to happen to computer graphics since the invention of the I don't know, the Chrome ball. It's just, I can't stress that enough. Don't be afraid of nodes, because nodes are everywhere. They're in Expresso. They're in material editors for different renderers. You can find them in compositing applications. There's something that you just are going to have to learn if you even as an After Effects artist. Maybe you just kind of dabble in 3D here and there, and you don't really feel like you need to know nodes. You do, because those nodes are going to come up in your job in the form of doing Nuke compositing or Fusion compositing or something like that. So I want to say, just learn nodes, man. They're not hard. They're easy.
What I was going to say, I think the thing, and I can only speak to it from the Espresso angle, but I think a lot of people look at the end result and it looks intimidating, and that's like almost a positive of it, where it's like, when you're making it, it's not difficult because you put one node and then the next node and the next node, and you're like, oh, I need to add in this node. Let me go plug that back in over here. And by the time you're done, if someone were to come over your shoulder and look at it, it's like, oh my God, what did you do there? That looks insane. And it's like, no, this is a simple thing. It's just multiplying these couple numbers together and then adding this, and then it goes over there. But when somebody looks at it, it's like, what? So,
yeah, I mean, if you don't know any nodes at all, like you just look at them and you're like intimidated, they can be intimidating. I mean, they look complex. It looks like there's a lot of crazy things going on. But let me tell you, like, when you understand it and you kind of just switch, a little switch in your brain is going to click. And then your brain is going to say, oh, I get it. And then from that day forward, just like that day when you learned to ride a bike and it clicked in your head and you're riding on your own and you never forgot after that day, you got it down. There's going to be that moment for you in nodes. It's just, you've got to get to that point.
The moment to me, and that's the super exciting part, it's my favorite thing, learning anything new, is, and what's super great about any kind of node thing, I'm going to keep talking about Espresso, and I'll probably make more tutorials. And if you guys haven't seen my tutorial,
some energy out of them. I got some energy.
If you haven't watched my new tutorial, check it out, because I go into some advanced node things. But my favorite thing about nodes and Espresso and just learning new things is when you're sitting there and you add in, you could do simple things. Like it's always like the Espresso tutorial is the set driver, set driven. Like that's, everybody can do the set driver, set driven. And then if it's like, okay, just start using the math node. Just try like the math node, like add, subtract, multiply, divide. Like that's all it does. And then you start using that. And then it's like, you know what? Let me right click and look at the menu and look at one other node and then figure out what that node does. And now I've got that in my head. And it's like ingredients. Like you just keep on going to your spice cabinet. You're like, oh, now I've got oregano. Like now I've got cayenne pepper. Now I've got you can do all that stuff. You can do all the math you want with the math node, and you don't have to use anything else. But then you can go and grab, the formula node or the condition node or a not node, or there's so many, and you can just take that one new ingredient. And now it's like, oh, I can apply it in all these different ways. And then you suddenly hit that moment when you know a good amount of them. And now you're like, I want to know all of them. And that's what's great. I think people assume you have to know all of them, but you don't. You need to know like two. You know two, and now you know how to use Espresso. And then you just keep tinkering around with it until the day when you're like, wow, I get this now, and I want to learn everything I can about it. And at that point, it's not intimidating. Now you want to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when I started with Espresso, even the first version of Lightkit, I think maybe it had, 5 nodes, 5 different types, of nodes. It was a spider web of stuff that it did, but it was, you don't have to start. The concepts behind it are more complicated than the actual things that you're doing it with. Does that make sense? Like, for me, for me, Espresso, nodes, and that whole like visual metaphor for code was almost like dominoes to me, where if you look at a domino set, it can look complex of like, wow, you had to set all those up, but every one was like really simple. Like every step of it was just putting one domino next to another one. And then now you have this complex web that you can input certain things and get a different output. And to me, once I recognized that I was building, you know, a domino set or like a roller coaster for my images to go through, or a number to go through, and then at the end of that roller coaster, it's going to come out as a different number. That made that to me that like signal processing made a lot more sense. And for me, you know, everything always goes back to music for me, but for me, it was like signal flow through a mixer. Like I understood how a mixer worked. I understood how compressors worked, how mic pre's worked. And I just kind of thought of it that way. Here comes those signals coming in, and we're doing some things to it, and then we're spitting it out, and it's going to go drive something else. So I agree. Definitely one of those things to add to your list. Go watch some Chris tutorials for sure.
We would always like, when I was in production, if an After Effects job came back after a year and needed revisions, it was always the worst thing ever, because you're fishing through an After Effects comp trying to understand what this person did a year or 2 years ago, and they didn't keep an organized project file, and there's no real way to tell what was going where. And it was always like you're hoping that you're outputting the same thing or the right thing that person had outputted before. And when we started doing more node-based compositing, and we had to open up a project from a year ago, none of those problems happened, because you could literally say, oh, here's the output. Let me just trace this all the way back to the input. Oh, there's the input. So this is what they did. Oh, this is what they want to change. And like that process, like, it's like, wait, what? Like I can actually map out, no matter how, because, you know, there's some artists that are sloppy. There's some that are really, you know, together and like keep a really clean project. But with node-based stuff, it's almost impossible to kind of be sloppy. I mean, you can be sloppy, you can have your nodes like scattered around, but the fact is, I'm going to be able to go to the end and trace your steps back to the beginning. And like that to me is like awesome, because I've inherited so many crappy projects over my career that you're just like, what were you thinking? Like, why is this doing this?
Yeah,
but with nodes, there's really nowhere to hide. I mean, I'm guilty, I guess, in some respects of kind of over noding it, and only because I'm trying to isolate something to give myself the ability to go back and change. So I spend a little bit more time at this part of the node. If I'm doing material, I might make it so that, you know, this is a little bit more editable in the future, but I could have done it faster, better, easier, or whatever.
And the same thing with, I like that over noded.
Yeah, like
he's gonna over node
Espresso. When I first opened up Cinema 4D, that was probably the first thing that I really started to play with, and it wasn't because I was like, oh, you know, I'm huge into expressions or anything like that. But in other programs, there isn't a visual, besides maybe XSI, there was no visual language for what that was doing. This was the first program that I'd used that had that, and I was really excited about it. So in the first week of learning cinema, I made like 4 tools in just Espresso.
You dove into the deep end right away.
I did, and I was like, I never had this. Like, this is great. Like, I wish I had this, you know, when I was using 3ds Max. I would have made 20 million plugins, you know, back then. And just looking at how powerful it is, and how I don't even know it nearly as well as Chris does, obviously, but I do try to use it. I try to build rigs whenever I'm doing anything. So I try to rigify whatever I'm doing. And some people are like, oh, that's too much time. It takes too much effort, and it's a pain in the butt. Well, it's not really. Like, if you think about what you're doing and you future-proof it a little bit with some rigging, you'll thank yourself in a year, maybe even less.
I agree.
Sorry.
Yeah.
went on a node rant.
Yeah. Well, no,
I think we all had our
node rants.
There's a little bit of a challenge to figure out when you need espresso, actually, when you need to build up those rigs. It's even if you're going to write a script or if you're going to make an espresso rig or do anything like that. There's always like, well, I could just do it the manual way right now, and that's going to be the quickest way.
Mhm.
But you're not going to just do it once. There's going to be a change, and you're going to have to do it all again. So like I will make complex espresso rigs because I'm making this really complex like joint chain or like a whole bunch of connectors are connecting. It's a giant hierarchy, and you can use nodes to say like, go to the child, change the setting, go to that child, change the setting, and you go all the way down the hierarchy. It's like, okay, it's gonna take me 20 minutes to set up this espresso rig, or I could just do it manually right now in 10 minutes. But as soon as I have to make one change to that joint chain, I've now doubled that length of time, or I could have made the espresso and it's not taking any more time again ever. So there's that kind of like, I almost want to call that like the one shot version. Like, but, and depending on your job, I've mentioned some of this before, but like in my old job, when I used to do production, a lot of stuff was very repetitive. Like there was always a stage, there was always seating, there was always a big lighting truss overhead, like there's always screens. So I learned espresso just by building my own rigs, by being, here's the stage rig, here's the lighting truss rig, and just going crazy. And every day that I thought of like a new setting or a new parameter or something to add onto there so I could do things quicker. And to some degree, it was dangerous because I would have a project manager come in and they'd be standing there. And as they're describing it, I'm like, okay, here's the stage, here's this thing. Like, and I'm building it in front of them like instantly. And they're like, how are you doing that? I was like, oh, I built these tools. So for repetitive tasks, it was amazing. Yep.
Like a
so much
hammer?
fun. I loved it. Building rigs is one of my favorite things ever.
Well, I think the fun thing, and I don't know, some people will be like, fun. It's not fun. Well, it is kind of fun I kind of think about it like I'm cheating. I'm being lazy. You know what I mean? Like it's like I'm gonna trick the system. I'm
Well,
gonna make
you're working as hard as you can to be efficiently lazy.
exactly. That's what I love about it. Like I'm thinking about a way like, okay, if I make a little rig for this, then I won't have to do that again, and it'll save me time. And so these like little things, these little hacks that you do in your daily workflow, they're fun because I feel like I'm like cheating or something. I don't know. It's kind of
No, I mean, I think that's the impetus for a lot of plugins and workflows and those little cheats that save you 2 minutes every time. You add those up, between all the little stuff that is included in Cinema 4D plus any plugins used plus any workflow things. Like you add all that stuff up and you're saving hours and hours like every job. And it's I don't know, that to me is really what motion designers do best, is like solve problems that haven't been solved yet. It almost like they're given this new thing to do that ideally has never been made, or at least this version's never been made before, and they have to go out and like build this new thing. But what can you rely on in the past that you could build again, or what parts of it can you reuse? And anything that you could bring in that you can reuse can speed up your workflow, can speed up your rendering at the end. All those little tricks is a little bit what got me interested in espresso and coding and all that stuff. Like that's how Lightkit got started. Lightkit Pro started because every light I made was like, why doesn't this light reflect anything? Lights should be reflection too, not just light. So I had to make a light, and then I had to add a plane in front of it, and then I had to parent the plane, and then I had to add some texture to it and a little gradient to it to make it more like all those little steps. Every time I made it, I'm like, I need to build this as an object I could just use, because I'm not going to rebuild a studio light every time I need it. So I think those questions that you have, it reminds me of something that always pops up every time there's a new version of Cinema 4D, or there's like a beta tester. We have this issue with our beta testers too. It's almost never that something is ever broken that they find, because motion designers and motion graphics artists always find a workaround.
That's why I'm a terrible beta tester, because I'll make it work anyway. Yeah. Instead of telling them a better way, I'll just be like, oh, I figured it out.
Right. Instead of looking at it and going, there really should be a thing to add this, we just go and make it. And the best that I've worked with are people that go, yeah, we could do that. And then we go figure out how to make it, whether it's a hack with a green screen or filming something practically, or however we can hack our way through this process. The end goal of making it look good is really the only thing that matters. And all the sloppy code and all the internal rigs and all the green screen mats we had to try and all the experiments in the basement, like all those things are just the ingredients, and it doesn't matter really how it comes together. I guess what I should say is it doesn't matter how it's made. What really matters is when you open the oven at the end, like that it looks good and is presentable to the client, and it is what they wanted. And sometimes
I like that. We're not motion designers, we're motion hackers.
Motion hackers. We need a new one. We got motion graphics, and then now it's motion designer, and now it's motion hacker. I think as you learn nodes, you could start to call yourself that, right?
There you go.
You're motion hacking.
I always wished that, like, after learning Espresso, and I already had an understanding of node-based compositing and node-based material editors. I always thought, like, why can't they figure out a way to get some of the node-based compositing tools into the node-based material editors, like basically taking tools from Nuke and Fusion, bringing them into Arnold, Octane, whatever node-based material editor you're using. Because there's a lot of things that I feel like wouldn't be that hard for them to figure out. And I feel like I kind of sometimes when I'm editing a material, I almost feel like I'm compositing, and I want to pull a key on a texture or something. And so I kind of wish that there were some of those aspects of node-based compositors inside of renderers. I think that would be cool.
That's an interesting thing. I mean, in general, it's kind of this debate on like, would you rather use a tool that does it all and can kind of bring in the best of compositing and image preparation and all this stuff into one tool, or are we better served by like specializing and saying, all right, we got to use Photoshop for this, and then After Effects for this, Cinema for this, and Nuke for this or whatever. I don't know. I mean, that's always been a struggle. Not a struggle. It's always been a constant question that I hear from people too, which is a lot of early 3D users will just think it all has to be done in Cinema. I don't know if you're saying this same kind of thing, Chad, but yeah, Chris never left. Chris never left, and he's actually a good example of how
squatting in this program for years
of how far he could push it. But I will also say,
not until the daily renders did I finally start opening up Photoshop.
Yeah, I will say when we started showing like some, even just simple curve adjustments and some things that you could do in Photoshop, which I think even Chris, you learned while we were doing some of our double, like our tag team tutorials, or when we would do Ask GSG together.
There's a lot of tricks. I mean, I knew Photoshop pretty well, and I use it for like photo manipulation. But when it came to renders, it was always nope, straight out Cinema.
Right.
Otherwise, it's cheating. And it's like, wait, it's 3D. It's already it's
already cheating.
Yeah, it's all cheating. Everything we do is cheating, and you should use whatever tool. If it makes sense for you to print it out and then take a photo of the printout and that looks better at the end, do that. Like whatever gets to the final goal is, to me, this is probably another. We should have this discussion another time, but I think there's a stigma out there of like what you're saying, Chris, and I think you even still have a little bit of it as a part of you. It's like, if you can't do it in Cinema and you have to rely on Photoshop or color correction, then you didn't do it right in the first place. And what I would say, Chad says go learn nodes, and Chad and Chris say go to learn nodes. I'll agree with that, but I'll add experiment, use the tool that's right for the job, and learn some of the other things that can really add a lot of final render. I get this question a lot. I'll just say this out loud because I get the question in our Instagram. You could direct message us and all that stuff. I see this, and it's hard to answer on Instagram, so I'll try to answer it here. They'll always say like, what am I missing? I learned all this stuff, and I got my render out, and it's all technically it works, but why doesn't it how do I make it look more professional? They'll say in these weird terms, like, how do I make it look more professional? And it is all those extra things. It's all that Photoshop compositing skills that will help push it to that next level. It's learning After Effects and adding a little hint of a lens flare on the corner. Like, there you go. Chad's
well
got
timed.
lens flares. Nice, dude. That worked out well.
Did you say that because I was doing this? Or
No, I didn't even. I wasn't even
unrelated.
watching. Oh, wow, this works. For those of you listening, Chad's got an awesome flashlight doing some sweet lens flares. See, so there you go. You don't need it. You don't need to get a lens flare plug-in. You just need a camera and a bright flashlight. You do some recording and screen it on top. But
if you carry the metaphor through, if you just zoom out one level, it becomes like the software is nodes. So it's like you're gonna plug Photoshop into Cinema, and then Cinema back into Photoshop, and then output that to Twitter. It's just a series of nodes.
It's all nodes, man.
That's right. It starts in my head, and then we get modeling, and then
start with the wake up node. Plug that into the brush my teeth node. Subtract clothes node. Enter shower node.
Chris, I'm seeing like maybe a self-help, book.
I want to see a
nerds,
node. We should node out.
Link your nodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say that
the node-based day.
If any of you saw any of my renders that came straight out of Cinema, you would think, why this guy sucks. Like, this guy sucks so bad. And that's because you know how far you need to push it in 3D. And then you're like, I can just do the rest in the comp. And then I just do the rest in the comp.
You know what? Let's all try this in the next month. We got a little homework for everybody. We're all gonna do. We all have to do some daily renders for our Instagram page anyway. So for one of them, especially if it's a really drastic difference, let's actually make a little blog post, and we'll just do all three of us. We'll say, hey, here's a before and after of the straight render from Cinema. And then here's the compositing, or oftentimes I'll add like texturing or like vignettes, even on those simple ones I've been making recently. It's a huge difference between the final render and all the compositing. And what I'll actually add too is it's not necessarily a huge difference when you look at it side by side, but your brain will go, that looks flat and dull and boring, and that looks finished. When you see them side by side, even if it's a subtle difference, that little color correction, that little, tweaking of the final, even just the black level or something, like some little fix. That
I always tell people, like, imagine you're shooting, if you're not a camera person, this will probably go over your head, but imagine you're shooting log. And when you're shooting log, everything looks really flat and washed out, because you're basically capturing all of the information onto the sensor. Now, when you look at something that's shot log and you look at it and you're like, wow, this looks like crap. No, it actually doesn't, because there's all the information in the highlights. There's all the information in the shadows. Now, you can crunch it down all you want, color, and like really tweak it and make it look awesome. And that's what everybody does. So when I approach 3D rendering in particular, I always go for what I call a flat pass. I always like try to get that overall log kind of feel, knowing that I'm going to be able to push and pull it in the comp. And I think that if you have this image in your brain, like, I want my blacks to be just a little bit lifted, and I want my highlights to be a little bit warm. If you try to achieve all that in Cinema or Maya or whatever, you'll want to kill yourself, because that's really, every tweak is like 10 minutes of waiting. And just save it, man. Like, get it all there, get your flat pass looking really good, and then put the filter on in your mind and say, okay, yeah, I'm going to take it into Photoshop or After Effects or whatever, and I'm going to crunch it here, and I'm going to tweak the mids here, and just take notes in your head of like what you want to do to it, and then say, okay, good, I got my image rendered good enough, take it the rest of the comp.
See, I'd have to come at that from a different direction. Like, I don't have that visual in my mind, but for me, I do pretty much take every daily render into Photoshop, and I go and I just tinker with Photoshop. Really, I'm just, doggy. I just tinker in Photoshop, and I tinker and I tinker, and I do things that I like the look of. And I have a rule: if I don't think it looks better, If it's like, well, it used to look good, and this other one does look good, then get rid of it. If it doesn't distinctly make it better, if it's not making it better, get rid of it. But it always is like, okay, I make the final image I'm looking at. It's like, okay, well, there's a final image. I kind of like it, but I also really like the original render. But then I go back and look at the original render, and it's like, ooh, wow, I really changed that. Like, it's once you go back and look at it where you're like, wow, okay, this definitely did add a lot to it that didn't used to be there.
I almost think of it like I would never leave the house like in my pajamas because they're pretty gross. And so what like I would never let a render out of my machine just right out of the cinema or whatever.
Let it render out naked?
Yeah, I would never do it, man. I would never.
It's like going outside,
leaving the house without makeup, for.
It's good going out without your clothes on.
Exactly. I'm like, dude, you trust me, man. If you saw, you'd be like, what the hell? They're so bad.
Let's do that. And I would encourage you guys too, if you're posting and sharing, especially early on in your learning, post both side by side, like actually show.
We should make a hashtag
too. Yeah, make a little. That'd be
hashtag
good.
Side by side or something. I don't know.
Like before and after. We'll figure something out. Let's make that a little challenge for us too. And one of them I'll direct you to right now. For those of you listening, is an After Effects tutorial. And the name's going to escape me, so I apologize. But somebody sent in their After Effects file, and I showed all the before and after of their 5-second project winning animation, and you'll see the difference. He literally rendered it out in black and white with like no shadows and gray, and he added all the lens effects and all the color and everything. He actually added in After Effects. It's beautiful. And we do a side-by-side comparison and show you what came out of cinema and what ended up on screen. It's a really cool one. I'll find out the link to that, and that'll be in the show notes as well. Let me write this down. After Effects, before and after. Yeah, that reminds me of another little trick for those of you listening, if you want to try this. A lot of times I'll do a screen grab. I'll do like a quick, ugly render, low-quality render, and then do a screen grab of it, paste it into Photoshop, and do a rough color correction as I'm working in cinema, just to know that I'm on the right track, just to know that I don't have to continuously tweak things in cinema, that I can bring up in a low quality version and say that's looking the way that I want it to. That frees up my mind and goes, it says you're on the right track, Nick, and stop messing around with all the textures and colors and get to the actual rendering. Mm-hmm. Because the quicker you can do that, the faster your job's done. And honestly, the more tweaking you can do in post, I mean, that to me is always better anyway. So
totally. We should probably wrap up. We've been kind of all over the place this time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm feeling I got more energy though. How are you guys feeling?
You guys got to see the transition of us being kind of tired and low energy, and Chad was yawning all over the place. Now we're ready to rock.
I've probably yawned more in this podcast than any other podcast.
See, this is the before and after for us.
I'm ready to rock.
The before is at the beginning of the podcast, and the after. Well, we didn't get to our big topic, but
we'll save that.
I think we'll save that one. And as always, if you're still listening, first of all, thank you guys for listening. This has been really fun for us to keep doing this, and all your feedback and comments and reviews on iTunes really help. That's really cool to see as well. So if you're listening to us on iTunes, you can get the show notes here at grayscalegorilla.com/podcast. I think I'll take you to a page that lists all the podcasts. And if you're on YouTube, it's down in the description. You could click on all this stuff. We'll make sure all that's there. And hey, if you're listening to this before Thursday, January 12th, make sure you head to grayscalegorilla.com/HDRI Link and sign up for Chad's Octane and Arnold live workshop, where he's going to show you not only HDRI Link, but also how to speed up your rendering in Arnold and Octane. So if you use those third-party renders, sign up. This is the week. We're also going to have some special pricing for HDRI Link just for the launch week. So stay tuned for that. If you guys have been looking at HDRI Link and thinking about getting it, make sure you check stuff out tomorrow. And the rest we'll talk about later. I'm going to go make another cup of coffee. I think that really helped me. And let's all make sure we get our nap in, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Nap day. GSG nap day.
Yep.
Puppy pile. So it's us snuggle. Gorilla snuggles. All right. Thanks again for watching, listening, everybody. Like I said, I love podcasts. So, and I just love walking around with other people yelling at me in my ears. So if that's us to you today, I just really appreciate it. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you in another podcast really soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.